Folks, sunsetlakesebede.com, our favorite sponsor here at the Majority Report, is excited to release the first two products of its brand new functional mushroom Sebede line. Focus and Relax. That's right here. Oh, this is the Relax, and this is the Focus Gummies. The Focus Gummies contain a blend of lion's mane, cordyceps, and Sebede to help you with attention and mood. And the Relax Gummies contain reishi mushroom, ashwagandha mushroom, and Sebede to help you better manage stress and ground yourself. I need both of those. I've got them. I'm taking them both simultaneously. Folks, these are great. I had a bunch of these, the Focus gummies the other day, and they were great. They taste great. But I don't know. I think I felt a little more focus. But these, the Sunset Lake Sebede gummies have been an integral part both to not only my relaxing and my focus, but also my sleep. These have melatonin in them. And they, of course, also have, which I have been partaking in, some with THC. And so they've got all sorts of gummies, and they've got, of course, the just the sour gummies with the Sebede. Check it out. But here's the exciting part. If you head to sunsetlakesebede.com right now, you can save 30% on all Sunset Lake Sebede gummies with the coupon code MUSHROOM. Plus, if you spend over $99, you can choose to add a free 20-count jar of the new gummies to your order. As always, Majority Report listeners can get 20% on everything else in the store with the coupon code LEFTISBEST. But now is the time to go and get and try these new gummies and even try the old ones. The sale ends at the end of the day on December 26th, so don't wait. Head over to sunsetlakesebede.com. Take advantage of this deal. Grab yourself some new functional mushroom gummies. See their website for terms and conditions. Great company, great product, and right now, a great sale with the coupon code MUSHROOM. And now, for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Monday, December 18th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Diane Winston, professor of journalism and communication at the University of Southern California, author of Writing the American Dream, How the Media Mainstreamed Reagan's Evangelical Vision. Also on the program today, Israel killing of 3 hostages in Gaza exposes Israel's lies about protecting civilians. Meanwhile, Israel's allies politely ask for restraint, and Netanyahu, with the Israeli polls showing his political life ends with the end of the Gaza slaughter, says, noted. Also on the program today, Pope Francis okays priest's blessing for same-sex marriage. Senate racing to negotiate away asylum rights and broader immigrant rights to close Ukraine aid package. More polling with more bad news for Joe Biden. And speaking of bad news, Rudy Giuliani liable for $148 million worth of defamation, which, if you're wondering at home, equals 7,400,000 of those cameos he'll have to produce to pay for it.
You better get to it.
Florida, I'm good for 4 of those.
Oh, yeah?
So it's down to 700,399,096 cameos.
There we
Better
go.
get cameoing.
Florida Republicans boot their chairman over rape allegations and or his thruple.
Thruple is maybe close to third nipple, is what you were thinking of?
As thruple. Sorry about that.
Thruple.
With his Moms of Liberty wife. New report, Clarence Thomas made directed complaints and appeals for more money as a justice shortly before Leonard Leo introduced him to multiple billionaire benefactors. The FTC...
Friends.
Yeah, friends. New friends. Friend in need. FTC wins a major antitrust ruling against a giant biotech firm. And the Department of Transportation issues a $140 million fine versus Southwest Airlines for its delayed flights in 2022. And lastly, U.S. homelessness grows by 12% in this country, highest level ever. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for joining us. It is, as Emma Vigeland says,
Fun Day Monday.
Fun Day Monday. Did I say Pope Francis? Is it not Pope Francis?
I thought it was Pope Francis.
Yeah, it's Pope Francis. I mean, I think.
Yeah.
This has been a new one.
Oh, I
you're a
guess I
resident.
understand. Somebody on the IM said, on the program today, Pope Francis.
Oh, that would be...
And that's,
I told him to call in.
Yeah.
The fun half.
You,
That
you have
was
the
a,
the Catholic line, right?
I misplaced the comma, I guess, in that situation. It should have been on the program today, comma. Pope Francis does something. He's not going to be on today. Not today.
Not today.
He's not filling in for you.
Yep. And he's not going to be visiting the show. Folks, thanks for joining us, and congrats to someone amongst us. We've been
I
we
mean,
were public
legally
about that.
married.
I got legally married on Friday.
That's what it means to be a married man of valor.
Yes, it does.
You didn't even have to play that.
I have to-
Now you've got it down.
Well,
was good,
the battery died over the weekend, so I have to do
That's a
it
good
manually
volley,
now.
Matt.
Congratulations, Bradley.
Thank you.
He's got a real glow about him. Let's with new polling has come out of swing states that show Joe Biden not faring particularly well. Third-party candidates are doing well. There's 4 of them in these polls, and at this point, they're appealing more to soft Republican, lean Republican voters who would have voted for Joe Biden in 2020. And as you know, Joe Biden won the election with about a total of 40,000 votes. I think it was over 3 different states. Those same states may not be the same ones that are in play this time, but nevertheless, the last 2 elections have been decided by 110,000 votes over the course of 3 states in each of those 2016 and 2020. Because of the nature of our electoral college. So very small margins and very small leakage, as it were, of voters deciding they're not going to vote for Biden this time around and they're going to vote for a third party, or I think in very rare circumstances they would vote for Trump, but it's more often than not just not voting for Biden.
Or not voting at all.
Or not voting at all. Although, it's unclear from these polling, what people are going to do in that situation. And of course, we're a year out. Nevertheless, a year out, here is Donald Trump. And granted, he is at peak needing to motivate Republican base voters. And I don't know why I say necessarily granted, because that should be just as disturbing as what he's saying. He is well in the lead in New Hampshire and Iowa. So I don't think that you can assume that this is extremism for attention as much as it is him and the people who will be voting for him. Here is Donald Trump, and this was on Saturday in Raleigh, at a rally, I should say, in Durham, New Hampshire. And this is the type of rhetoric he's doing. And we should also say, as he's saying these things, Joe Biden and Democrats in the Senate are negotiating away things like asylum rights and other immigration rights, which just gives you a sense of how much this country has moved to the right on immigration from even the days when George W. Bush was trying to forge comprehensive immigration reform. When Democrats abandon the fight for political expediency, as they did in many instances over the past 10, 15 years, this is what happens. And Donald Trump was a brief respite from that slide, but less so from politicians and more so just from voters. But here is Donald Trump in Durham, New Hampshire.
Destroyed our country, and we're going to make it great again, greater than ever before. And there's nothing I can do that's going to top that. I've had plenty of the other life, right? We've had plenty of the other life. We got a lot of work to do. You know, when they let, I think the real number is 15, 16 million people into our country, when they do that, we got a lot of work to do. They're poisoning the blood of our country. That's what they've done. They poison mental institutions and prisons all over the world, not just in South America, not just the 3 or 4 countries that we think about, but all over the world. They're coming into our country from Africa, from Asia, all over the world. They're pouring into our country. Nobody's even looking at them. They just come in. The crime is going to be tremendous. The terrorism is going to be, and then we built a tremendous piece of the wall, and then we're going to build more. And the election was rigged, and we... I
mean, he's just going through a laundry list. He's obviously lost on his teleprompter. But poisoning the blood of our country, if that sounds familiar to you, then you're familiar with some of Hitler's writings and speakings. And he's talking about deporting all of these immigrants. And he wants to make it clear it's not just the 2 or 3 countries that you think of in Latin America, Central America. He also wants to make sure that you're thinking about African and Asian immigrants as well.
Yeah. Do we have this? I sent this polling that this Michael Kagan put up here, and speaking about kind of like the incongruous nature or the inconsistent nature of how Americans view immigration. And this is a pretty small poll. It's a Fox News poll, but this discrepancy, I think, is borne out just, anecdotally in what I'm seeing. When this question is posed, allowing illegal immigrants who have jobs in the United States to apply for legal status, 62% favor, 36% oppose. Then ask them this question, deporting immigrants who are living in the United States illegally back to their home countries, 67% favor, 28% oppose. And, that means that there is a wild discrepancy in, or a huge gap, a vacuum being left where the American public doesn't really understand what immigration policy really means and what a humane path forward would be. And because the Democratic Party for the past, when they're in power, I guess, Obama tried to move forward with some reform, but at least the Biden administration has just completely abandoned this topic. It leaves a huge gaping wound, an opening, a vacuum for fascist rhetoric.
Oh, it flatters their premises. Bill Clinton the entire time in the 90s was looking at how much, actually all their attacks are false. Look at how much we've spent on border security. Obama, like you said, tried to do the reform, but actually just became the deporter in chief. And yeah, like all that time, and Biden, once again, granting the premises. Oh yeah, we'll look at Title 42 again. The Republicans had to get Title 42 under the pretense that there was a global pandemic and we had protect ourselves from disease, and now we're just putting that back on the table.
And to be clear, what I read from those polls is that not just that people don't understand our immigration system, they also have a completely twisted notion of who immigrants are.
Yeah.
The idea that, I mean, go back to that first graph, or poll, I should say. Allowing illegal immigrants who have jobs in the United States to apply for legal status. 62% want that to happen. Yet, in the next question, they say deporting immigrants who are living in the United States illegally back to their home countries favored by 67%. What people don't understand is the massive percentage of undocumented immigrants who are in this country who are working.
Yeah.
And certainly who would work if they were allowed to. The perception is that you have all of these millions of undocumented immigrants in here just to get on the really cush and luxurious dole in this country of food stamps or Medicaid. And this is just a twisted perception about who essentially the undocumented immigrant population is. And there's an opening, like Emma says, the size of a bus to drive through. It's not going to be easy, but sustained over time education by political parties, in this case the Democratic Party, as to who immigrants are, forcing in some ways, you obviously can't force, but you can certainly direct the media narrative.
The Republicans do that all the time.
Well,
I mean, the Democrats just have no understanding
they don't
of what
want
to do.
engage in that fight.
Well,
in the
Biden's
same way
just reacting.
Yes.
And but there's no. What's the long-term strategy then on immigration?
There is none.
Because we're gonna cave to get Ukraine and Israel money over the hump, without conditions for Israel, as they have killed 20,000 people in 10 weeks, because you're reacting to polling where the right is says that you're not tough enough on the border. Well, there's no oxygen being given to some sort of counter narrative for why the Democrats are better on immigration, because of how these policies have not worked. It's crazy to me. There's no strategy.
During 2010, in the run up to 2010, the Obama administration started pushing for austerity in the wake of the financial crisis. And at the very least, the Biden administration learned at least one lesson there, that you've actually got to, when the economy is in crisis, you actually got to spend your way out of it. The Obama administration, specifically at that time, was saying stuff. The reporting was that the president doesn't believe that we shouldn't be spending money, but he also doesn't want to expend political cachet on teaching people that that's not that austerity is not the appropriate response. So you heard a lot of belt tightening rhetoric, and the austerity came in. It gave us an incredibly slow and anemic recovery that took almost 10 years to get to rebound in terms of employment. We lost millions of homes to foreclosure. Many people think that's why Donald Trump was even remotely positioned to be able to win in 2016, that there was a growing dissatisfaction. And of course, we saw how easily the notion of austerity and deficit reduction could be jettisoned. And
Trump did it first with
Exactly.
the first round of checks during COVID. It's incredible. The Democrats only abandoned that
he also
belt
did it even before then with massive tax cuts.
Sure.
In building the deficit. They weren't going to. There was no more talk about the deficit. Paul Ryan was the last one who was maintaining that fiction, and off he went, and that was it. So we'll see. I don't know what the Biden campaign can do to deal with these things, but certainly alienating more parts of his base over this does not seem to be the most, I think, intelligent move, at least from a political standpoint, and certainly from a policy standpoint. we'll talk more about this well into 2024 and early into 2024, I imagine. Meanwhile, a couple of words from our sponsors. In just a moment, we'll be talking to Diane Winston, author of Writing America, Writing the American Dream, how the media mainstream Reagan's evangelical vision. Speaking of holiday season, it's happening right now.
It is?
Yeah, we don't have our War on Christmas thing, but great gift idea for you. This is actually a doubly great gift. It's a great gift in and of itself, even if you actually had planned what gift you were going to get in advance for your parents, for your grandparents, even for your kids. And I'll tell you why. But it's also great because it is digital. And so you can provide this gift. It is a really great gift, but the first part of it's digital. So you can sign up for this up until the last minute. You want to give a gift to your loved ones that makes them feel special and unique, and also keep you and them in mind throughout the year. That's why you should give everyone you care about Storyworth. Want to thank Storyworth for sponsoring the Majority Report today, and also thank them for offering $10 off to your first purchase. If you're a listener to this program, at storyworth.com/majority. Storyworth is an online service that helps you and your loved ones preserve precious memories and stories for years to come. This is great. I did this years ago. They advertised for a while, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. But what it is you sign up for this. They will send questions on a weekly basis to whomever you gift this to, your grandparents, your parents, uncles, aunts. Frankly, like, I would send it to myself and give it to a gift to my children. They'll appreciate it more as they get older. But Storyworth will email your relative or friend a single life-related question that you pick from their collection. Some of them are innocuous, some of them are clever. It's like, what's the bravest thing you've ever done? Or what's the farthest you've ever traveled? Or what was your favorite car? If you could wake up tomorrow with a superpower, what would it be? Things like this that you wouldn't think would necessarily, they're just not that terribly complicated questions. But because they're not intimidating, people tend to answer them, and you never know where some of these stories are going to go. And then what happens is Storyworth compiles these answers over the course of the year, and then puts it together in a book. And you can put pictures in and whatnot. So with Storyworth, you're giving those you love a most thoughtful, personal gift from the heart and preserving their memories and stories for years to come. Go to storyworth.com/majority, save $10 on your first purchase. That's storyworth.com/majority, save $10 on your first purchase. Also good for a gift. And something that people will think about you every day of the year, more or less, if you're healthy, when you give this gift. I'm talking about a Hello Tushy bidet. Wiping doesn't make sense. Well, it doesn't make sense at all once you've used a bidet. But if you think about it, you get dirt on your hands. You don't just take a dry piece of paper and wipe it off. No, you use water. And that's, you can give yourself the ultimate clean and turn your bathroom into a personal oasis with the refreshing stream of clean water from a Hello Tushy bidet. Folks, I'm telling you, use a bidet once, you will never go back. It is amazing. It's a totally different experience. You go, you turn the dial on the water, shoots up, cleans your bum, you pet yourself dry with some toilet paper. You use like 80% less toilet paper, and you feel better, cleaner. Hello Tushy attaches to your existing toilet. You don't need any, electricity, or you don't need a plumber there. It has a patented self-cleaning smart spray and a build-up resistant design that helps you minimize grime buildup, and even has antimicrobial knobs, making your weekly cleaning chore a whole lot easier. But it's super easy to put on your toilet. If you know how to change out your toilet seat, you know how to put on this bidet. It'll take you about 10, 15 minutes tops. Super easy. And it is, in many respects, life-changing. Every Hello Tushy bidet comes with a 30-day hassle-free return and a 12-month warranty. Join the over 1 million real pooping humans who have made the switch. Hello Tushy's offering our listeners an exclusive limited time offer, 15% off your first bidet order, plus free shipping. Go to hellotushy.com/majority for 15% off of all bidets. That's hellotushy.com. Enter the promo code majority at checkout. See the site for details. We'll put the link of all our sponsors on the YouTube and podcast descriptions and at majority.fm. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Diane Winston, professor of journalism and communication at the University of Southern California, author of Writing the American Dream, How the Media Mainstream Reagan's Evangelical Vision. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome to the program Diane Winston, professor of journalism and communication at the University of Southern California, author of her latest, Writing the American Dream, How the Media Mainstream Reagan's Evangelical Vision. Diane, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here today.
So let's start with something that was a big surprise to me, because I turned 18 just on Reagan's second election and missed by voting against him by 3 weeks. And what really surprised me about your book was learning that he was as religious as he was. I had no idea, and that was certainly not the way that he was portrayed at the time, as far as I can remember, at least in the communication that I received. I feel like other people were receiving different communication about him, but he wasn't. We talk about that for a moment.
Well, Sam, I think you were receiving the communication most people were, because the media saw Reagan's religiosity as basically a ploy to win voters. They said he never went to church. He didn't show any signs of religiosity. So reporters tended to think of him as opportunistically religious. However, if you go into the records and the history, you will see that he had a very long-standing connection to Christianity. When he was growing up, many of his friends thought he would become a minister because he was so engaged in his church. And after he left the presidency, there was a letter that reporter Karen Tumulty found in Nancy Reagan's possession that Reagan had written to her father when he was on his deathbed, when her father was on his deathbed. And basically Reagan said, I know you've been an atheist all your life, but if you don't embrace Jesus, you will be in hell forever. I will not see you again. Please, please reconsider. Please become a follower of Jesus. That's not verbatim, but that's what the letter said.
And we should just be clear. The letter wasn't written after his presidency. The letter was found after his presidency.
I think the letter was written after his presidency, but it was found after his presidency.
Okay.
And that's a pretty clear indication of someone's religiosity.
Yes, I would imagine. And what I understand the sort of like, I mean, he was at least twice divorced, I think it was, and he was from Hollywood at least at one point. And so there's this sort of perception that he wouldn't be religious. But how did his message of religiosity get to the right ears, I guess is the question.
Well, he was a hard sell to some conservative evangelicals because, as you say, he was divorced. He was from Hollywood. And most of all, he had been president of a union. He'd been president of the Screen Actors Guild. And he was a pretty good Democrat until that time. So he had a lot of convincing to do. He began that when he ran for governor of California, and he began to talk about his evangelical bona fides. He went to a very conservative church in LA, and a lot of those folks began letting it be known that he was born again, he was saved, and that he would be a good Christian politician.
What was the? Talk about Jerry Falwell and the moral majority, which had really started to gain steam, I guess, in the years in which he was in California as governor, and even in his first run for the presidency. They were like, how did that relationship develop there? Like, I mean, if the media was out there with this notion of Reagan as not a religious person, that he was, more sort of like coastal in his sensibility, how did the message get communicated? Because I'm comparing it to like Donald Trump, who's also a coastal figure, who also multiple divorced, also does not appear to be religious. I also happen to think he's not.
Yeah.
But Mike Pence ended up being the vehicle for bringing along those people, when needed. For George W. Bush, he was a self-proclaimed reborn, and they used marriage equality to establish his bona fides. How did Reagan do this in a way that reached the evangelicals who were only then, around that era, at least, in the late 70s, starting to enter into the sort of like what had been prior left to Caesar was no longer only Caesar's purview?
Yeah, you're exactly right, Sam. Most people don't know it, but Jerry Falwell also had a church in Orange County, California, and he had known Reagan for a while. Falwell initially was not supportive of Reagan when Reagan was governor because Reagan did not clamp down on abortion like Falwell had hoped. But subsequently, Reagan began becoming more outspoken about his conservative evangelical policies. He was a strong law and order governor. He cut back welfare here in California. And I think that after the debacle of Barry Goldwater in '64, Republicans knew they needed to put a friendly face on their conservative policies. And Reagan began barnstorming the country, talking to a lot of groups through his General Electric connections, going to churches, and he managed to convince evangelicals. One of the big turning points was when he spoke in Dallas to a large crowd of Southern Baptists and other evangelicals and said, I support you. I'm your guy. And his sincerity got through to them. And at that point, they were so desperate to get someone in there to repeal Roe versus Wade and to return prayer in school that they were willing to go with what might have been an unusual candidate at a prior time.
You write about how the media sort of both ignored or put a more benign face, to the extent that or maybe even ignored Reagan's personal religiosity, but ended up like creating a narrative that was imbued with this religiosity. Can you talk about that and tell us what religious imaginary means?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, but the media is an important part of the story. And I sometimes think I have trouble getting that across because the media is still the vehicle to tell the story. A friend who was a reporter at Time magazine when Reagan was running the first time said that Henry Grunwald, who was ahead of Time then, told the staff, "We've already killed 3 presidents. I don't want to do a 4th." In other words, he was very well aware of the fact that Carter, Ford, and Nixon had all been slammed in the media, and the media bore responsibility for all their falls. And he didn't think doing that to Reagan was a smart idea. So that to me is key in terms of how the media covered him, because at that point in time, we did not have the many outlets we have today, and media followed each other. So if Time was doing something, you could pretty well be sure that Newsweek and New York Times and Washington Post were doing it all. Reagan seemed to many of them like a sweet older man, genial, cowboy type. They weren't going to go after him in the same way that they had gone after his predecessors. That's number one. Now,
and can I just add, just so for the context for people who are watching the program who are all younger than me, Time magazine was the pinnacle. I mean, the New York Times were certainly up there too, but Time magazine, we have no analog in today's media landscape to what Time magazine and Newsweek was. Newsweek was sort of like like following, almost like comedically following Time, but it was also quite big. I mean, Newsweek was big, but Time was, that was it. It was the center of the news media. And this is in an era when we had 3 news stations that were at 6 p.m. every night, and that was it for an hour, half hour, depending on what it was. And then the New York Times, and that was basically it. That's where 95% of the population got its news.
Exactly so. And if the head of that organization was basically telling his reporters, go soft on Reagan, because we don't want to be responsible for the 4th president's decline, that is a major deal. That you're exactly right, Sam. It's hard to understand today because there's not the same kind of media monopoly and media gateposts. And as I said, Reagan was depicted by the media as this genial older man who smiled a lot and made gaffes. And they had stories about him that, they would tell, but they really didn't understand what was going on underneath, which was this, as you say, conservative turn that he was perpetuating in his rhetoric, which the media itself picked up. So if he said something like the Soviet Union is an evil empire, which was something he said in a speech in March 1983 to the National Association of Evangelicals, most reporters didn't really talk about that because they thought it was like really weird and stupid, and they didn't know how to put it into a news article, like who calls the Soviet Union an evil empire. But his evangelical conservative followers totally got what he was saying. He was saying that we are in a cosmic struggle with communism. Communism is our ultimate enemy. And we as Christians need to fight a system that's anti-God, anti-capitalism, and anti-democracy. And to some extent, that is how the message got to evangelicals, because they had ears to hear what secular people might not have.
I want to just add too, about the first point about Reagan getting treated with kid gloves. They called him Teflon Ron at that time, exactly. Where nothing would stick to Ronald Reagan, but nothing would stick to Ronald Reagan. What became a self-fulfilling prophecy, and there was no attempts to make anything stick to Reagan. And also, it's also amazing to hear the idea that calling the Soviet Union an evil empire was so anachronistic then, because the idea of calling our enemies evil now is almost like no one doesn't do that. Right. Like at the time, people have to understand that things had secularized in civil society in such a way that good, evil, no, there may be our enemy, they may be, but you don't use that religious language to describe these things any more than you would, I don't know, some weird sports metaphor or something.
Exactly. And that's why the phrase was not quoted in most articles, in most television broadcasts, until, if at all, the very end of the piece, where, they kind of threw it in.
Talk more about he began to appeal, because this is in 1983. The 1984 election happens, And by all accounts, at least the political, the professors I had in college, on day one we started, and they talked to us and they said, you've just witnessed a realignment of the voting electorate in 1984, and that was his reelection. And talk about like what was involved in that turn, and then we can get to sort of how his notion of like these three, or his version of the three freedoms, which is more of like a trinity of freedoms.
Exactly. Basically, after World War II, we had a political consensus around a welfare state. And FDR had put the New Deal into play. We basically were a country that was getting more and more prosperous. We believed that the economy could help everyone thrive and become more comfortable and lead a better life. That ended in the 60s and 70s for a variety of reasons, including the war in Vietnam, the counterculture, the creation of the birth control pill, women's liberation, the growth of Black power, the beginnings of the economy going offshore, and finally the oil shortage that was precipitated when we aided Israel in the 1973 war. And as a result, the oil countries cut off our supply of oil, which caused a lot of financial distress and a lot of long gas lines. So by the mid-70s, people were pretty fed up with everything. And one of the reasons they looked to Carter for change was because he promoted himself as a practical businessman. Things only got worse under Carter, and they culminated with the Iranian hostage crisis when the Shah was dethroned and Iranian militants took Americans hostage. I realize now that I have given enough history to make viewers want to either run to their history books or to YouTube to catch up on everything that went on during that period. A lot went on, suffice to say. And by 1980, voters were ready for someone to say, all this shit is past. We have to put the country back together. We are going to make America great again. That was Reagan's slogan, which Trump took. Make America great again. Reagan promised to turn the country back to something wonderful. And people wanted to hear that message. And I believe that was partly why the media was so gentle with him, because they saw this was a message that America needed. Now, for Reagan, that message was predicated on fulfilling God's role for Americans. Reagan truly believed that God blessed America with freedom. He truly believed that God wanted Americans to be free. And over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, and I point to 1983 as an example, he put these messages into his policy statements. And one good example is his desire to cut back welfare. He said he wanted to cut back welfare because he wanted to cut back taxes. He linked the two. But he had another reason for cutting back welfare, which was he believed people should take responsibility for themselves. Part of being free was taking responsibility for yourself. And so the two, cutting taxes, taking responsibility, were linked for him. Now, for people who are religious, they could hear the religious idea of taking care of yourself. For people who weren't religious, they could hear cutting taxes, saving money. And that way, a religious message could intertwine with a pragmatic message and thus gain favor with the population. Does that make sense?
It does. And we should just also say, though, this also coincides with the sort of continuing backlash from the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, and the idea that welfare was, and he did a lot to do this, was turned into something that was largely appreciated by Americans to something that was only for black people. And he gave us the welfare mom and the pink Cadillac or something. I can't remember exactly what he had said. And then, of course, we also know that he opened up his 1980 national campaign near the Neshoba County Fair, which was the site of, or right around the corner from the site of where 3 civil rights workers were famously killed in Mississippi. So all of this stuff, he's sort of managed to reach all of these constituencies with religious language that we, just as the non-religious, speaking for myself, we're not coded to understand that.
Exactly so. Yeah.
And how did that fit into his rhetoric on the Soviet Union as well? The doublespeak for religious people. You touched on it earlier, but just these notions of evil connected with communism and the lack of religiosity versus the religious evangelical vision of capitalism in the United States.
Yes, yeah, that's right, Emma. He very much believed, as I said, that God blessed America with religious, economic, and political freedom. And he saw the Soviet Union basically as an evil empire because it denied people the ability to worship or to be religious. Communism was a contradiction of capitalism. There was no free market. There was no individual property. And it was a totalitarian state. People had no ability to vote for their leaders. So for those very reasons, he believed communism had to be destroyed, which is kind of amazing if you think about it, because, by the end of his term, the Soviet Union was over.
Yes. We should also say, and you mentioned him, General Electric, in between his role as a SAG president, General Electric hired him to go around and basically campaign against universal health care, and intertwine that this message of anti-communism with the idea that, like, if people get health care, we're going to get that. But talk about those trinity of freedoms, as you call them.
Well, political freedom is pretty clear. It's the ability to vote for candidates, to express your political ideas, to have a voice. It's democracy. Economic freedom for him.
Didn't it also, though? I mean, you're right that also involved limited government. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I was going to say economic freedom meant freedom from government regulations.
Okay.
Which the limited government, yes, that's part of the political freedom, but it's also a very big part of economic freedom. That a free market was not only what we think of as a free market, but it also meant you and I are free to have the government off of our backs when we want to create our own businesses. So economic freedom meant limited government. Reagan believed the less government, the better. In fact, one of his best known quotes is, the 9 words most Americans fear is, I am from the government and I am here to help you. He believed that the less government, the better. Now, his idea of religious freedom was not what you or I might think it is. It's more the idea of religious liberty that conservatives are pressing now. And that is to say, if you are a religious person and you do not want to serve gay people or make them a cake for their wedding, you do not have to do that. So religious freedom to Reagan meant you were free to have your religious ideas and act on them, despite the outcome to others.
Religious law trumps civil law in this instance. I mean, for all intents and purposes.
Yes. I mean, in this realm. Right. I mean, Reagan wasn't talking about a kind of Sharia, but he was talking about.
Well, he was talking about Christian law. I mean, he was specifically talking. I mean, like what it is. I mean, if they had the opportunity to impose covenant marriages on all of us, I have little doubt that they would. I would little doubt that Speaker Johnson wouldn't impose covenant marriages on everyone. If they had the ability to, have the government in many respects penalize people for divorce, they certainly would penalize people for having sex out of marriage. I mean, 6 years after Reagan leaves office, no less, 4 years, Patrick Buchanan is out there chastising, Murphy Brown, a fictional character, for having a child out of wedlock. Or was that Dan Quayle? I think it was Dan Quayle, actually, who was George Herbert Walker. I mean, this was their mentality. And in many respects, for the individual practitioners, their Christian law trumped civil law in this instance.
Yes, but I find it deeply ironic that I am sitting here defending Ronald Reagan, because I did vote in those elections, and I was deeply depressed when he was elected, and even more depressed when he was reelected. So I have to say, I don't think that Reagan would have been on board with Mike Johnson. I don't think Reagan believed in. Mike Johnson talks about a biblical republic. I don't think that's what Reagan ever had in mind. In fact, if you look at what he did, he was much more concerned with the political and economic sides of the religious argument than the social ones. He was more interested in getting rid of the Soviet Union and getting rid of government regulations than he was in repealing Roe versus Wade and getting prayer back in school. So Reagan did begin the shift that has given us Mike Johnson and Donald Trump and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And for that, I will forever hate him or dislike him. But I don't believe that their politics would have jibed with his. And I pray that he would have been calling them out, as Liz Cheney.
Well, let me ask you about that, because I mean, I can accept that his personal politics may not have been where Mike Johnson's were, but when we elect a president, we're not just electing the president, right? And he is building this coalition, and he doesn't just have to say to these people coded things that they will acknowledge. When it comes to staffing and when it comes to putting people into position, and I'm thinking like Ed Meese, who was the attorney general, who started going after pornography. Now, I don't know that Ronald Reagan himself personally cared about pornography. When you have a surgeon general who's basically waving off the burgeoning AIDS epidemic, and the Reagans themselves sort of like being seen as like whatever, but a whole apparatus that is refusing to respond to an epidemic. This is a function of, regardless of what he believed personally, it wasn't enough for him to say, we're going to staff this administration with people who are not going to go after pornography. We're going to staff this administration with lawyers at the DOJ who are not going to go after voting rights. We're going to staff, our healthcare system with people who are going to actually take this seriously. He did the opposite.
Sam, you're totally correct. He was a conservative. That's why I didn't vote for him. That's why most people I know didn't vote for him. That's why I didn't like his presidency. And that's why I had a lot of problems with those 8 years. The fact of the matter is that I've come to realize there are bad conservatives, and there are even worse conservatives, and there are really terrible, scary conservatives. And, that is a sad commentary to make on our politics, because in retrospect, as many horrible things that Reagan administration did, it pales in comparison, I think, to what we're looking at today, which is a true repeal of our sexual freedoms, of our personal freedoms, of our democracy. So, I'm not extolling Reagan. I'm just saying that it got a lot worse.
How did we get from there to here?
Reagan legitimized a kind, I was talking earlier about that welfare state consensus. Reagan legitimized a move away from that to a more market-oriented philosophy. And basically, the market is not ethical. The market is not humanitarian. The market doesn't care about people. The market cares about money. And that sort of mentality is what drives our country today. And that, I think, because Reagan kind of swathed it, he wrapped it in religion and spirituality, and he said cutting taxes is doing good for the poor because you're making them personally responsible. Because he said that, we should fight enemies who don't believe in our views. He legitimated a way of thinking that instead of bringing people together, I think, begin to polarize them and pull them apart.
It's interesting because I think, you can look back at the Carter administration and certainly see deregulation and, bringing in, I think it was Volcker, and anti-unionism, a burgeoning anti-unionism that was happening there. But my sense is it wasn't trumpeted as a value in the same way that it was with Reagan, and that Reagan made it sort of almost like a full-on aspirational value.
Right, and that's because Carter's Christianity was a more communal humanitarian type of belief than Reagan's. Conservative evangelicals are very much about individualism. You are saved because of your relationship with Jesus. I'd like to save you, but it's your responsibility to get saved. And that sort of emphasis on individualism is part of the vision that Reagan instituted. It's okay to be about yourself. It's okay because you're taking responsibility. It's okay because, it's your life and your freedom. And it's important to remember that many of us in this country who are not tremendously religious don't take religion seriously. But I believe that people need a vision for their politics, because if we're all going to be members of the state, pay our taxes, stand in line, we have to believe that there's some greater good to what we're doing. And part of the reason for Trump's success is because the Reagan vision is no longer holding, and people are angry and frustrated, and they want something to believe in. Now, unfortunately, what I think a lot of the conservatives today believe in is just tear it all down. Let's get rid of everything. That's their vision. That's a scary vision. I mean, Reagan's individualism and market philosophy was detrimental enough. Tearing the whole place up is really scary.
But that's like, it seems to me just a matter of degree, right? I mean, that Reagan, once you say the 5 scariest words in the language are, I'm from the government, I'm here to help. Traveling from there to, we should get rid of government and tear it all down doesn't seem to be a huge sort of, those two sentiments seem consistent. One may be more dramatic than the other, but once you get to one place and you realize that government is not here, it's not helpful, it's an obstacle, the idea of getting rid of it, deconstructing the administrative state, as Steve Bannon said that they were doing in the first Trump administration, seems to be the logical conclusion.
You know what? That is really smart, and I'm going to use it, because that shows the line between Reagan and Trump even more clearly than I had stated it. But yes, that's exactly true. Unfortunately, it's not a good idea, right?
Oh no, yes, I agree. I agree. It's a bad idea. But I just want to also just like, where is the media now in your perspective? If the media at that time was hands off of Reagan because essentially there was a sense by the elite, we need to settle things down. We've had a decade essentially, and maybe a decade and a half. I mean, coming into 1980, assassination, resignation, the guy who pardoned the resigner, he's out. Jimmy Carter, the malaise it was called, and sort of like the vulnerability of America with 450 days of hostage taking, held by Iran every night. Ted Koppel's going on television, counting it down or clocking it. And the elite who control the elite media in this country, and there was almost no other media, when you're talking about national politics, than the elite media at that time decide we need to have stability. So we are going to largely support this president through everything he was saying in terms of his campaign, and then ultimately into Iran-Contra, if you ask me. Then like what did the media continue to do when they adopted this rhetoric or they adopted this framing or didn't call it out? Like, how did it continue?
At the same time that all this was happening, much of the media, which had been in family hands, began to pass into corporate chains. And families tended to be rooted in the community and know their community, whereas corporations began to look more at the bottom line. Part of what was happening, therefore, which also helped Reagan, was that USA Today, the USA Today response. USA Today, which came out during that first term of Reagan's, totally changed the way people looked at the news. USA Today was news for television. It was bright, light, colorful, graphic, short, peppy, happy. And its success kind of took newspapers away from the hard-charging, investigative journalism into being more happy, friendly. Now, the change of the newspapers to become more happy, friendly, and the consolidation of newspaper chains basically stopped a lot of breaking stories and a lot of criticism of Reagan and the government. And as you said, when people did criticize Reagan, oftentimes it didn't stick. In fact, after the Grenada War, when reporters began saying none of this stuff really was as the government told us, no one even believed it. No one even cared. They bought the narrative that the government told them that we had won that war. Now, flash forward to today. We have so many more options. We have so many more newspapers, but it's increasingly driven by this market sensibility of how many eyeballs do you have? How many ears do you have? What do people want to hear about? And what we've seen over the last couple of years is people love to hear about pussycats and car crashes. And Trump has really benefited from this by making himself a sensation that media want to report on. The big question to me is, do we want to continue with media hyping Trump the way they have been, or would it be better to pull back on that?
I mean, that to me seems like a separate question. I mean, and I get the what happened with the media, and people I don't know will remember. I remember when USA Today first came out, people were very worried that we were trivializing news. In fact, USA Today now is actually not is a much stronger publication in my mind. But at that time, it was specifically for prior to things like Instagram and TikTok and social media. It was set out to appeal to a smaller attention span. But also subsequent during that time, Reagan changed the telecommunication, or I should say, Reagan got rid of the fairness doctrine. And there was a loosening. Clinton really did it more so, but there was a loosening of ownership requirements and really a change in the media. And that also, over the course of that next 10 years, news, which used to be a loss leader, became a profit center for the television and whatnot. But I guess I'm most interested in the adoption of a religious framework in the way that we communicate and how this language entered into our lexicon without any alarm bells going off, it seemed like.
What do you mean by religious lexicon?
Like the idea of talking about, to throw off and say blank is evil, evil of Axis, to go from when Reagan says it's an evil empire in the 80s to 20 years later when Bush can say evil of Axis, and that becomes Axis of evil, rather. The idea of using religious coded terminology in our politics without sort of anyone saying, hey, wait a second, in any type of without the mainstream media having any sort of awareness that was happening, seems pretty astonishing to me.
But I think that you just hit on it. The mainstream media is populated by a lot of people who aren't tremendously religious and who don't understand religion. And they don't care about it. They think it's superstitious. They think it's stupid. And so to them, when they see language like that, they use it only because they think it's so dopey. And they are kind of showing oh, Jerry Falwell, he says, God is punishing homosexuals. Isn't that great? Because our readers will think, these people are buffoons and idiots. So the media has circulated and normalized that kind of language because they thought it was something readers might enjoy, that people in New York over their breakfast coffee would read about this and, oh, darling, can you believe there are people who actually think this way? So I think they normalized it without understanding the power of it. Bottom line.
Interesting. I mean, but at the same time, it's also important for us to be aware of it, right? I mean, this stuff is going to take place in those circles regardless. And Jerry Falwell is going to reach all of Jerry Falwell's flock, whether, me sitting at the breakfast table reading the New York Times, on the Upper West Side, am aware of it or not.
Well, exactly so. And one of the examples in the book I think is most telling. I talk about the AIDS crisis, and I talk about how Falwell became a proxy for Reagan since Reagan didn't say anything about it. And the media began adopting Falwell's framing of the crisis, so that when Newsweek finally did a cover story that purported to tell the truth about AIDS, their language was punishment, retribution, discipline. I mean, they basically took Falwellian terms to tell their piece. Now, they weren't necessarily adopting Falwell's critique, not at all. But Falwell had sort of set the stage for thinking about this crisis as not only a medical crisis, but a moral crisis. And I think sometimes the media hears things, and people in the media hear things, and they think that readers will respond to them without really thinking about what the upshot of their choices might be.
Interesting. Diane Winston, professor of journalism and communication at the University of Southern California, author of Writing the American Dream, How the Media Mainstreamed Reagan's Evangelical Vision. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Sam, and thank you, Emma. It was a pleasure to talk with you both.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye. All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program. Just want to remind you, in an hour, I can't do the math, at about 2:35 p.m. So about an hour and 14 minutes, 13 minutes. We will be on, by we, I mean Emma and I, on the American Prospect 8-hour telethon.
Yeah.
We're
going to try to get us both on at the same time. We'll see. We'll
All right.
see.
Well, nevertheless, we're going to appear.
Yes.
And if it's just one of us, then Emma will be on after ESVN. But I think we're both going to be on. So check it out. The American Prospect is a great publication. I support it both as a member and full disclosure as a donor. Not a big donor. I don't, like David Dane's never personally thanked me.
I mean, even if you don't read it, you could still, give them some money because you're probably reading it through listening to our show because of how much raw material they provide to us.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I really don't think that there is a better outfit reporting on sort of the policy aspects from a left of center, and I don't mean that that it's close to the center, but I don't know that it's necessarily. They're critiquing the policies based upon the efficacy of these policies, with an outcome wanting more leftist policies, and
they do it from the word wonky is overused, but it's a wonky public in terms of like they go into the nuts and bolts of all of the policy and they don't leave any kind of stone unturned.
It's just a great, and it's also one that I think influences at least some people in the White House. The way it works and I think all administrations is some less than others in terms of running the gamut of the personnel that are in there. And everything is siloed in terms of like foreign policy and then, domestic policy and different areas in domestic policy. But the people who are advocating for the policies that you like, they are getting their ideas and I think often giving their ideas to the American Prospect and using, I think there's a certain symmetry in terms of like building outside support. And you'd be surprised at how little outside support it takes when you're talking about those type of arguments that take place in the White House.
You have one staffer that puts a Matt Iglesias blog on President Biden's desk, and you have another that puts a David Dane piece on.
Exactly. Which is why often I think you see them on Twitter sort of going at it a little bit.
Interesting. Interesting.
But so check it out. Join us there. You will. I don't know what we're going to be doing, but I will not be. I will try and do my best not to cough. I still have a cough from last week. I was sick last week. I think people know that. I mean, and so when at one point, like I just hit some
threshold.
Once a night now, I have a coughing fit.
Oh.
Yep.
All right.
And then it goes away.
That's pleasant.
Yeah. Folks, it's your support that makes the show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercial, you get the fun half and all sorts of other great things. So help this show survive and thrive. Become a member today. Jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, you can gift a membership. Do we remember how to do that? What was it? Cucknation.org or what did oh my God. Didn't
Are we still paying the
I don't know if that was but you can gift a membership. Just simply
right, I'm going to go use the work computer to go to cucknation.org.
I think I can't remember what Ronald Reagan had did something like that. Nope, that's not it. Yeah, I do not do that. Do not do that. But you can gift a Majority Report membership by going to looking for the gosh, I don't even know what it is. It's poor business ship on my part. We'll find that out. We'll announce it tomorrow.
Good.
We've only had it for like 10 years.
Okay.
6 years.
JoinTheMajorityReporters.com.
Well, jointhemajorityreport.com is where you go, and there's got to be a way to do.
Oh, you're trying to remember the Cuck Nation.
I'm trying to remember how you gift a Majority Report membership, but you can do that. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, and featuring the Majority Report blend. So if you want to gift some coffee, justcoffee.coop, get the Majority Report blend, use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Emma.
ESPN, it's getting into the thick of things. I went 3-0 this weekend, no big deal. And then was this weekend I was like, I'm going to be responsible. It's Christmas time. I need to be buying. I just bought a bunch of gifts. Probably shouldn't use disposable income on gambling.
Palm starts itching.
Yeah, and like literally everything I thought would happen. So I guess that's how it works. But we talk about that, not just myself. The teams kind of separating themselves. I'll dance on the Cowboys' grave as well. youtube.com/ESPN show today.
Matt.
Yesterday for Left Reckoning patrons at patreon.com/Left Reckoning, David Griscom and I spent about 20 minutes getting into Joe Rogan's talk with Stavros Halkias, comedian, where Joe's back on his the pandemic made people made people lazy, and Stav. It's very funny. Different approaches you get to being on Rogan. One is to like completely disagree. Like there's at one point Stav says, "I prefer what you're saying is," which is like I'm gonna agree with you, but say like actually I think the pandemic made people realize how badly they were treated by bosses. It's very very funny. So anyway, patreon.com/Left Reckoning. Joe Rogan can't seem to have a guest on without wanting to rope them into his sort of like Steve Miller Bannon-esque like right-wing bullshit these days. And I think it's a shame that comedians have to go through this sort of political acid test before they're allowed to promote themselves. But
on Rogan's show?
Yeah, on Rogan's show.
Well, he's only going to be interested in promoting comedians who have a similar disposition, I think, for the most part.
It's like he does like a test of it
because right?
Stav's great. I really like Stav. I'm own bias towards Stav, but they go through like 2 hours and 20 minutes of all just talking about comedy clubs, and stuff that I don't really understand how people who aren't in comedy give a crap about, and funny stuff like that's like kind of like wacky radio stuff. And then Rogan busts out is like, do you see what they're giving to migrants in Chicago stuff? And it's got to be so jarring as a comedian to be like,
well,
how are you going to update on that? And he's just he's just read the.
Like, I think they're doing it because of votes.
Like I think Stavros is more inclined to handle that, but that's why I thought it was so wild when Jim Gaffigan was on, because I was like, I don't think Gaffigan's really like
a political
as equipped
comedian.
To be like, Zuckerbucks, I guess.
Well, people should check out Stavi's stand-up on Netflix. I watched it already. Fat Rascal. Netflix is still producing crap for Amy Schumer, but on the other side, you get things like Stavros and his stand-up special. It was really great.
Folks, in the Majority Report app, there is a gifting membership link. So you can pick up the app, majorityapp.com, and there is a link in the and also you go to fans.fm/majority. Let's put it in the we'll put it in the YouTube and podcast link.
Nice,
there you can get the link there, or it's in the Majority app. Gonna take a quick break. Fun half 646-257-3920. We'll turn on the phone in a bit.
3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow.
What? What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? Is it?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello? Is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you?
no sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports.
We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Who libertarians?
They're so stupid, though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-501. 1/2. 3/8.
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
6, 5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all,
Yeah.
my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like
Yeah.
everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the week being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you, bye.
Love you. Bye-bye. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland. Fun half of the Majority Report. Not for nothing. No one's even noticed my haircut. Anyone in here?
I did
has not
notice
said
it
anything.
silently.
I did notice. I just forgot to say something.
Yeah, me too.
Still don't
I'm
notice it.
sorry.
It does look very good, though, Sam.
It's a little short for my tastes these days. But
Well, you look very professional.
I guess, I don't know. Nobody noticed.
Just don't show people the hole in your sleeve.
What hole in my sleeve?
There we go, right on the elbow. Right
shoot,
there.
really?
I noticed every time you wear that shirt. Yeah. It's
Damn it.
been there for like 3 months.
Really? Mm-hmm. Well, it's not growing, so there's no reason to get rid of that shirt then. It's not growing. I put like some, what do you call it?
Just put a piece of duct tape over it so it doesn't fray
I'm not
anymore.
gonna do that.
I'm joking.
But I could use like nail polish, right? Like clear nail polish.
To cover a hole?
Doesn't that sew it together?
Yeah, totally.
All right. I'll
Yeah.
just, Maddie Moron, just wanted to give a shout out to my beautiful fiance, Lucia, who is currently listening to the show on a closing stretch of a 10-hour drive to Memphis. In addition to being a big fan of the Majority Report, she also asked me how to find Chapo on Spotify, so she has joined the dozens of other Chapo girlfriends out there. JK, love y'all. Hit her something from the soundboard. All right, this is congratulations on that drive.
Lucia?
And the...
Or Lucia?
And the engagement.
Yes.
Desert Lefty, the thing about the media normalizing Reagan's rhetoric is they didn't understand the power is reflected in how the targets of satire don't realize they're being satirized. Most conservatives who are fans of the Colbert Report didn't realize Stephen was dunking on them. They thought his hyperbolic character was genuine. That's true.
Who was he based on, really? Like Bill
O'Reilly.
O'Reilly? That's basically just
100%.
O'Reilly. Yeah.
All the gestures, all of it was Bill O'Reilly.
The first, I remember my freshman year of college, I met a Ron Paul guy, and he was also a big Colbert guy, which is less ridiculous than a classic
Yeah.
Republican, but he also didn't understand, like, it was a bit.
It's amazing.
I think I was I was really into Jon Stewart, but I never got into Colbert but I think it was just, I was a teenager. Oh, yeah, okay. Well,
I
go back and,
the opposite.
yeah, there
You
we
should
go.
have been listening to
I should have been. I was not.
Janine and I on the Majority.
I was not there. I was not
We would have
quite
told
there
you.
yet.
Jon Stewart was just, his show started as a parody of the media.
It's more media critique, yes.
Well, he just took
Colbert's-
over from Kilborn, right?
Yes, but the show changed pretty dramatically under him. Kilborn was just like full on, Stewart
well, and part of it was because of 9/11. It became more of a critic of the political news media, and news media became increasingly news used to mean a bunch of different things, and now it's all politics. But Colbert was always a much more political show in the sense that it had a political agenda. He just did it as a character. Let's get into this. You may have heard this story over the course of the weekend. 3 hostages who were, and is it clear that who these hostages were? Were they Israeli soldiers?
I am not actually quite clear on that point, but in the end,
There were 3 Israelis.
One of them had red hair.
Well, yes, and so and this is important for in a moment. So the story is that as Israeli soldiers entered into this area, and I'm not quite sure where exactly it was, which city it was in Gaza. The Israelis moved in, and 3 hostages emerged from a building. They were carrying a makeshift white flag. They had also attempted to create a sign with food saying that they were hostages. And
help 3 hostages was reportedly painted in Hebrew on the flag as well.
And they were shot immediately as they came out with the white flag. They had their shirts off so they could show that there were no bombs attached to their chest. They were shot, and apparently the only reason why they found out that they were hostages, and the reason why they checked, was one of them at least appeared more supposedly Western, and specifically one of them had longer, and this is according to NBC News, long ginger hair and blue eyes. This is what stopped the Israeli soldiers to check on their identities.
And at least this person, Haim, the redheaded person, was supposed to perform in the at the festival where the hostages
They're
were taken.
at a music festival in Tel Aviv.
Oh, not
October
the same
7th,
one?
different one.
Okay, so
I guess.
apologies.
But yeah, but they weren't. None of the 3, as far as I can tell, were part of the IDF when they were taken hostage.
Okay, so they were civilian hostages, and the IDF shot them dead, despite them not wearing shirts, despite them holding their hands up in the air, waving white flags. And in addition to this obviously being an outrage in Israel, where presumably the failure of Hamas to release the hostages is part of the justification for this massive assault. But what it really goes to the heart of is, if this is the way they are treating civilians or just people who have their shirts off and a white flag in the air, people who are actively both aware of the way the IDF might approach them, which is why they took their shirts off. They were savvy enough to know that. They apparently, one of the guys who was killed ran back in, or attempted to run back into the building yelling Hebrew. And if this is the way that they treat people who with a white flag and their shirts off, who are they not shooting? We're told time and time again that the Israeli military, unlike any other military in the history of all war, treats civilians with special care. Yet tens of thousands or 20,000 dead in bombing.
In 10 weeks.
98,000 buildings leveled. And when they're hand-to-hand battle, right, which we were told specifically, we're doing this because we want to protect civilians. And these people are summarily shot. And the only reason why we heard this story, let's be clear, is because one of the victims had red hair. And it caused them to think, hey, wait a second. This isn't one of the typical people that we shoot.
Yeah. They didn't have plausible deniability in that point, especially because it was on the ground. There will be undoubtedly hostages that are killed in the bombing, but those will be blamed on Hamas because it won't have been from the gun of an IDF soldier. I just sent this just because I want to put into context. Israel has a history of shooting civilians who are holding white flags. This is from Human Rights Watch in 2009, where they documented 7 instances where Israeli soldiers fired on civilians with small arms during an operation in Gaza in 2008 and 2009, 2 months, December 2008 and 2009. These attacks killed 11 civilians, including 5 women and 4 children, and wounded at least another 8. In each case, the victims were standing, walking, or in a slowly moving vehicle with other unarmed children who were trying to convey their non-combatant status by waving a white flag. And I wanted to clarify if all of these instances, if you could go to the next screenshot, were instances where they were waving a white flag. And according to Human Rights Watch in 2009, that's the case. They found no evidence that the civilian victims were used by Palestinian fighters as human shields. You can hear that language again. Or were shot in the crossfire between opposing forces. In each of the 7 cases, at least one person was waving an improvised white flag made from cloth or clothes, which international humanitarian law recognizes as a sign of truce or surrender, meaning the IDF has encountered Palestinians with white flags before, and it doesn't matter to them whatsoever. They'll kill them regardless, and that's why they shot these people who ended up being Israeli hostages.
And to be clear, you will definitely hear the excuse that, well, Hamas has in the past used white flags to trick the IDF. So far, in all the reporting I've heard of that being an excuse floated, there has been no details to flesh out that report. Nevertheless, if it is the case that they're going to shoot people even with white flags, the even part is relevant. They're just shooting whoever they see. Now, maybe, if that person looks young enough, but we know that the IDF has a history of shooting children who, supposedly were throwing rocks at them or something to that effect. But it should give you a sense of the parameters in which they're engaging in these things. And yes, I imagine in battle there is you are trigger happy in certain instances. But the fact is that you can't then go and say we're taking extra precautions to protect citizens and that these numbers are fake and all these things when you're gunning down people who had the best possible knowledge one could have in how to approach the IDF in that situation, and they still were shot dead.
Yeah.
But here is Benjamin Netanyahu. He's at a news conference. This is in Hebrew, but there's translation. He is asked.
We don't have that question, unfortunately.
We don't have the question, but this clip is supposedly in response to a question about the killing, the Israeli killing of these hostages, and he immediately pivots to this. I am proud to have prevented the establishment of a Palestinian state because today everyone knows what a Palestinian state could have been after the war. The little Palestinian state in Gaza, everyone knows what could have been if we had succumbed to international pressure and allowed for a state like that in Judea and Samaria, that's the West Bank, around Jerusalem and the outskirts of Tel Aviv. So to be clear, this guy's bragging that his career, 25 years worth of plus of being a politician, and a military one prior to that, maybe 30 years now, 40 years of being a politician, has been dedicated to preventing the establishment of a Palestinian state. So when we hear, or we don't hear it anymore because they don't even bother, there's no one to negotiate with across the table. Understand, that was always disingenuous. They were specifically, that's why they built up Hamas. And by they, I mean Netanyahu. This is his own words.
Yeah.
It's also reported in the Forward magazine back in the, I think it was in the 90s, that Hamas was nurtured by Israel in the late 80s as a way to undermine the cohesion of Palestinian leadership and the political leadership and political system so that they could not come together and push for a Palestinian state at that time. So understand, there's never been, to make an assessment that there haven't been one set of partners on one side of the table is completely belied by the fact that it turns out the Israelis never had that interest. Certainly not since Rabin was assassinated.
Well, I mean, I read this from 972 the other day, and even that, the Rabin assassination, he never used the word the Palestinian state. Yeah. In the accords that he signed, a fact that he and other Israeli officials were careful to ensure. A month before his assassination, Rabin told the Knesset that his vision was to give Palestinians, quote, an entity which is less than the state, a precedent to the state minus advocated today by Netanyahu. This was in 2020 and outlined in Trump's deal of the century. Rabin also insisted that the Jordan Valley would remain Israel's security border, the very plan that drew international outcry this year when Netanyahu pledged to formally annex the area. Rabin's government used Oslo not as a blueprint to end the occupation, but to restructure it and minimize the cost to Israelis. The burden of controlling the occupied population was transferred to the newly created Palestinian Authority, blah, blah, blah. Essentially,
we're not going to give you a state. We'll give you a statelet.
Right.
Yeah.
And so even like the poster boy of liberal Zionism of like the past few decades in Israel was not really serious about a Palestinian state.
He just recognized them as people, and that was too much.
Yeah, like these poll numbers here that I sent from within Israel, I think, are really important. This is a Hebrew University poll that shows that 71% of Israelis, including 45% of those who voted for the Likud ruling party, think Netanyahu must resign immediately after the end of the military campaign in Gaza.
After
Immediately, but. This shows that Netanyahu does not have any incentive to end the mass killing in Gaza. In fact, he is disincentivized from doing so because the Israeli population will call for an election to get him out of office at that point, and he will no longer be in power. It doesn't mean that who Israelis vote in will be in any way like some sort of liberal. I mean, apparently Benny Gantz is the preferred prime minister for 22% of Likud voters, as you can see in the link below there as well. But the point is just like when he obfuscates Netanyahu and changes the subject when asked about the 3 Israeli hostages that were killed by the IDF, that is also borne out in practice where he can't really contend with anything that is happening in Gaza, any of the mass killing, because he has to keep doing so in order to stay in power. And you mentioned obviously that the Israeli government bolstered Hamas when he says there in that quote, like, I'm so glad that we prevented the Palestinian state from being established because look at what could have happened. He knows exactly what he's doing because they want Hamas to be empowered there so they can basically say this extremist population is incompatible with notions of democracy. And if we were to give them any kind of established state, or if they were to have political rights, then you know what they'd do with it? They'd kill all the Jews. They'd kill all of us. So we have no choice but to ethnically cleanse them. We have no choice but to kill them because they had the option and they chose extremism because they hate Jews so much. That's what he rests on.
Right.
And like, let's be clear, that's not true. It's also an extremely, extremely racist notion. So like liberal Zionists in this country, it's time to wake up to the white supremacy of Netanyahu's ideology.
That's the thing is like this is like it's like a, oh my god, he admitted moment, like what I think you should leave.
Yeah.
But
He's
it's also
been
like
admitting
this
it.
has been sort of
Yes.
openly known, and the only problem is like I see like Noah, I can't remember who it is, like liberal bloggers. And they'd be like, well, if this is true, then let's stop supporting him. It's like, this is what everybody on the left has been saying is true of Israel this entire time. And you've been calling them like borderline anti-Semitic for it. But this is just like the reality that every adult has been dealing with.
How many times have former Israeli government officials referred to what's going on there as apartheid? I mean, over the past 5 years.
How many times
Here is former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert. This was, I don't know, I guess 2 weeks ago on Turkish television. And, you know, this is not, Ehud Olmert is not some radical lefty. Here he is speaking about Netanyahu.
Netanyahu is a national historical disaster for Israel. He has to go. Ben Gvir is a terrible event. Smotrich is a terrible event. The Hilltop Youth in the territories, in the West Bank, is a terrible event. What I think about Ben Gvir and his friends, I've spelled out in Israel, not in Turkey. In Israel, in front of them, in the most extreme manner. I call them enemies. I say that they are butchers, they are killers, they are murderers, they are terrorists. I said it on my own people, on my own minister. Since 2009, the Israeli policy was absolutely negative, was not really prepared to embark on a meaningful process that was essential. They have not followed the policy that I've outlined, which carried a real chance for peace. And I don't release the Israeli government from 2009 of its responsibility for the lack of communication. I think that he is a danger to Israel, that he should be immediately fired, that he should be thrown out, that his bedtime. Because of many reasons, which have nothing to do with Palestinians.
So, in other words, I mean, imagine, you know, the idea of if he was a college student at Ehud Olmert and saying that for the past 15 years, and I would argue it's been longer than that, but let's just take it on his terms. The past 15 years that the Israeli government, their policy has been specifically for anything but peace. And that Netanyahu's government is full of murderers and butchers and killers. Imagine that guy is a undergraduate student, let's say a Brown. At what point do they get arraigned? At what point are they censured? The group that they're part of is not allowed to be there anymore.
Are you here on a student visa? Look out.
I mean, the Israeli, like, it is deeply frustrating to see liberals in this country being, you know, doe-eyed about, like, the Israeli government when this has been well documented for years at this point. Like, now the New York Times is reporting weeks after. Last week they had the report about how the Netanyahu government has bolstered Hamas. And it's like, golly gee, have you paid any attention to what Haaretz and the Times of Israel and Israeli papers have been saying on this front for years and years? This is not news. It's just the explicit policy.
Just read Gideon Levy. Like one Israeli from Haaretz, and, you know, who's been writing about this for like decade plus now.
Yeah.
Going to the IMs, WTF Cody. LOL, I know I'm already hot on the messaging, but the Ziwi interview with George Santos just came out. Z-Way, and I think it's going to be something funny you may want to cover. Happy Monday. Do we have that?
I saw one short clip of George Santos just saying, like, you know, the way to get me to go away is to stop inviting me places, which I thought is like, you know, I don't know if we need to play that, actually. But maybe we'll look for a better piece.
Nick in Japan, indirectly responding to Emma's immigration tweet about half an hour before the show, Democrats' commitment to popularism is letting the Republicans drive public opinion to where they want, and Dems just follow to the Republicans' home turf.
Interesting that a bunch of those people were aligned with crypto money.
Release the Nick Fuentes dirt. Please, we want to know. I got to go back into the emails and dig that stuff up. Iowa Ryan, my kids' high school had a very large Rudy Giuliani quote on their wall. It was a quote about doing the right thing even when no one is watching. And sadly, it was never vandalized. Rudy Giuliani, ladies and gentlemen. Here, let's play Rudy first, and then we will give Ruby Friedman the final word.
How do you finance something like how much Rudy has to pay?
Let's just go, let's listen to Rudy Giuliani first. Then we'll ultimately go to his Cameo page to work this out. But here is Rudy Giuliani. When his lawyer was making final arguments, and the plaintiffs originally sought, I think it was $43 million each. I think it was $43 million each, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I think you're right.
His lawyer said, this would, of course, completely break and destroy Rudy Giuliani.
Oh, no.
You look back on these things and you think, maybe we could have done that. It would have been a bargain because the jury ultimately found that he owed him $148 million.
And let's be clear about like what he did. He defamed these two poll workers and mother and daughter duo by using footage of what was reportedly them passing each other mints. Just going to let that set in for a second. And said that they were actually USB drives that were being passed around like vials of heroin and cocaine.
Here is Rudy Giuliani after finding out that he owes $148 million. Now, if I'm his security behind him, I'm looking at each other going like, do you think we're going to get paid?
There's very little I can say right now. I have to analyze this. Obviously, possibly we'll move for a new trial. Certainly we'll appeal. The absurdity of the number merely underscores...
Pause it for 1 second. Now, you'll notice that there's somebody behind Rudy Giuliani with a sign that apparently his lawyer is trying to hide with a briefcase. We don't know what that sign was, do we?
No, it's something about the coup, about January 6th. I just don't know the exact language. Do you see this guy's hair, though, in the left side behind?
Yeah, no, he's got a military, like a stylish military cut. But let me help Rudy Giuliani out. Now, listen, I'm not an attorney. I'm not an accountant. I can analyze what this ruling means. It means that you are broke.
I got to dig into the details.
I got to dig into it. Because it was like, off the top of my head, I was okay if it was $80 million. But 148.
But I found out that it is the 5-year max contract that was given to Nikola Jokic of the Denver Nuggets in 2018.
I need to get with my people to see if there's any way I can hide what little money I have left. And of course, I don't know how I mean...
Might not be able to go out this weekend, guys.
And to be clear, this is a civil case. There's no, he can't go to any prosecutor and go like, okay, guess what? I'm ready to talk about how Donald Trump did everything. Yeah. That's what he's got to analyze. How am I going to deal with this? Go ahead.
The absurdity of the number merely underscores the absurdity of the entire proceeding, where I've not been allowed to offer one single piece of evidence in defense, of which I have a lot. So I am quite confident.
Can you pause it actually?
Because
I read about this. He said he had all of this evidence and he had ample opportunity to present it. And then when he said I had all of this evidence to the judge, they were like, you missed the window to present the evidence. So he thinks that...
Right, because he
might not have the evidence.
Didn't he?
Or he's a horrible lawyer. And as a lawyer himself, who's been accusing Fani Willis in Georgia on the criminal side of things of being this terrible lawyer, a good lawyer would probably remember to put all this incredible evidence into the hands of the judge.
Note to self, should present evidence. Go ahead.
Which I have a lot. So I am quite confident when this case gets before a fair tribunal, it'll be reversed so quickly, it'll make your head spin. And the absurd number that just came in will help that, actually.
Why did you choose not to testify?
Why do you think it was unfair? You say it was an unfair tribunal. Why do you think it was unfair?
We gotta go, sir. Let's go. I cannot go into the details. I didn't testify because the judge made it clear that if I made any mistake or did anything wrong, she was considering contempt, and this judge does have a reputation for putting people in jail, and I thought, honestly, it wouldn't do any good.
Do you still believe that what you said about these two women...
Wonder if that could have been an excuse when he was Attorney General. I'm not going to give him... not going to participate in this because he puts people to jail.
I mean, they're being really strict about all the rules of court and stuff, so I figured I might as well just not even try.
This guy is like, honestly, I think he's going home and he's just trying to figure out like where is there any extradition? Like, well, who doesn't have an extradition treaty? But let's just listen a little bit more.
It wouldn't do any good.
Do you still believe that what you said about these two women in the wake of the 2020 election was truthful?
Do you still believe these claims?
Do you still believe those comments that you made?
I have no doubt. I have no doubt that my comments were made and they were supportable and are supportable today.
Still,
I just did not have an opportunity to present the evidence that we offered. Did you notice we were not allowed to put in one piece of evidence in defense? Do you also realize that liability is not based on any trial? Liability is based on her disagreement with me on discovery, which is absurd.
Why didn't you take the stand?
Because I believe the judge was threatening me with the strong possibility that I'd be held in contempt or that I'd even be put in jail. So it didn't seem like it was going to do much to persuade anybody, and it could give her what she seemed to be threatening.
Did you believe the women's testimony?
All the judges.
I gotta say, if I am on the hook for $100+ million, I'm gonna take the stand, even if they throw me in jail for a little bit.
Yeah, and I would remember to put some things into evidence too. I'd be on my P's and Q's to not have to pay tens of millions of dollars if I thought that were the case. I hope that the women are able to see some of that money. I mean, at least a good
$10,000 of it, please.
At least a good amount of it.
How much do you think they could honestly see?
I don't know. There's going to be an appeal, and then we'll get a notion. And it's really more a question of like, how much of any future earnings will will be garnished. Let's hear first from Ruby Freeman, who was one of those Georgia election workers, and then we will give you an idea of how Rudy Giuliani may be paying some of this back.
For now, I want people to understand this. Money will never solve all of my problems. I can never move back into the house that I called home. I will always have to be careful about where I go and who I choose to share my name with. I miss my home, I miss my neighbors, and I miss my name. I've heard some of you. Don't be sad for me. Don't waste your time being angry at those who did this to me and my daughter. We are more than conquerors. Pray for us as we continue to fight the good fight of faith. I tell my attorneys often, my friends say that God knew who to give this assignment to, because if it had been them, they wouldn't have been able to go through this.
It's couldn't be happier that this was the verdict, and hope that on appeal that I don't think it's possible. But on appeal, it would be nice if they just bumped it up 10%.
Yeah. It's just kind of 10% higher.
Here is how Rudy Giuliani, one mechanism in which Rudy Giuliani could pay off this $148 million verdict. Now, it's going to involve some work, but look, you can't just dilly-dally.
Pull yourself up by your bootstraps.
Anybody who's any more industrious than Rudy Giuliani, I don't know who that is. Well, I do, but I mean... and here he is. Do we have it? Put put the link up to his Cameo page, please.
This is most Real Housewives I see have like $175, $200, $150.
George Santos had to move his from $250 to $500.
Yeah, a pop.
Now here is Giuliani. Now, to be fair, he has suspended his account for the moment, temporarily unavailable. But it was only $20 a pop. And here's the thing, and you got to appreciate this. Now, just to be clear, $28 a pop. I did the math.
20.
Sorry, $20 to make up 148 million. It's actually very easy math. 7,400,000. Is that right? Do I have that right?
7,000,000. Well, I would also caution that Cameo takes a 25% cut, so you'll have to add another 25% onto that.
Ooh, that's going to be rougher for my math. So maybe he could do 25.
Okay, so
you can up his price. But here, check this out though. This is a deal, folks. Look at number 2. Look at how long it is. 6 minutes. 6 minutes.
He's going to have to cut that down.
He's doing 4-minute cameos.
Congratulations on your upcoming marriage.
Oh,
I think that this is one of the most wonderful days you're going to have in your whole life. It is,
and he should know. He had that day multiple times, didn't he?
Kind of contract, the first kind of human.
Is it with your cousin?
Relationship where people made promises to each other
that they broke,
and it's the core. It's the core, really, I think, of our civilization.
Pause it for 1 second.
Family.
I just want to remind everybody, I can't remember, and to be fair, I probably should have looked this up. I'm doing this from memory. But Rudy Giuliani left, I think it was his second wife, to have an affair, or maybe it was his first wife, to have an affair with a right-wing book publisher in the apartment set aside for workers who were digging out from the pile at 9/11. Now, one of the reasons that was reported back in the day why the New York City Emergency Response HQ, the sort of command center, was situated in World Trade Center 7, which also fell. Some people say it was pulled, or there was a massive storage of diesel fuel in there, from what I understand. It was reported that the reason why it was placed there, even though, and it may have been Bratton at the time when this thing was being built, I can't remember, said this should be in Brooklyn. Bless you. The reason why it was situated there is because Giuliani needed a bachelor's pad, because this is where he would have meetings with friends after hours who he didn't want to.
There's an emergency with my tits.
Exactly.
I need to grab them.
Yes, and just to be fair to Giuliani, because I don't want you to get credit for that. That was his supposedly what he said to someone who was working for him.
So he's 79 years old. How many minutes are in a year? I'm seeing 525,600. So how many?
520.
Oh, you're asking how many minutes can he spare on these cameos? Because you can't do 6-minute ones. If he's going to do 7 million, 8 million cameos, let's just,
he's a legal mind, not an economics
There's no way he's going to be able to do all that.
I mean, he needs to make it under a minute. He can't sleep. He doesn't have that many years left on Earth, so it's either it's sleeping and cameo time for Rudy Giuliani. That's all he's got.
All right, let's see what else we got here.
We didn't want to watch the rest of that 6 minutes of him talking about
well,
somebody's wedding.
I'm willing to
The
pass on
sanctity
that.
of marriage.
Joe Biden's impeachment is moving forward. They'll ultimately impeach him, I think, regardless of what they find. There was a story out today. We'll talk more about this tomorrow. That James Biden apparently was caught on tape with talking to someone else. That other person was under investigation. This person had contracted with James Biden's lobbying firm for $100,000 back in '96, I think it was, and I can't remember exactly what the issue was, but the guy has explicitly said, like, I only hired him because he was Joe Biden's brother, which of course is exactly what everything on K Street is. But you will hear about this ad nauseum from 1996. And we should just let you know. But in the meantime, what are the charges? You remember the two specific charges in which the impeachment inquiry kicked off with. The first impeachment of Donald Trump, but obviously the second one was January 6th. The first one had to do with specifically his phone call to Ukraine, and there was fact-finding associated, but the theory was that this was a breach of his duty as president to undermine the policy that was passed by Congress for his own personal gain. And here, Representative Joe Neguse, he is a Democrat from Colorado, asked Representative Guy Reschenthaler, a Republican from Pennsylvania, at the House Rules Committee hearing, wait, what exactly are the charges? Just so that we're clear on this, so that we know. And this is a pretty funny exchange.
I think the question I'm asking you is,
okay, go ahead.
What is the specific constitutional crime that you're investigating?
Well, we're having an inquiry, so we can do an investigation and control the production of witnesses.
And what is the crime you're investigating?
And documents. High crimes, misdemeanors, and bribery.
What high crime and misdemeanor are you investigating?
Look, I will, once I get time, I will explain what we're looking at, and I will make the equivalency.
No, I'm just asking you for
the last impeachment.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say, Mr. Reschenthaler, and again, I say this because I served as a prosecutor during the last impeachment of former President Trump. There was a specific high crime that he was impeached for on a bipartisan basis. 13 Republicans agreed. In 2019, when President Trump was impeached, there were two very specific offenses that he was impeached for. And I can't get an answer. I don't think members of the Oversight Committee can get an answer, or the Ways and Means Committee, or the Judiciary Committee. I don't think there is an answer. There's not, and of course it's unsurprising because according to even Fox News correspondents, House Republicans have been unable to make any kind of connection to a constitutional high crime and misdemeanor and President Biden. So I would say this, to make the argument that there is some similarity between, and I don't know if this is what you're suggesting, I hope it's not, between the various facts that you've focused and zeroed in on with respect to President Biden and President Trump's conduct on January 6th. It's very clear to me the American people would reject that argument outright.
Whether it's justified.
There you go. Oh, gosh.
Jump scare.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty amazing that they still can't get it together to even name
high crimes.
A crime.
The biggest ones.
General crimes.
Looking at the big crimes.
Super crimes.
Yeah, because maybe if you're going to make a claim about, say, like corruption involving China or Ukraine, and you put up an example of 3 payments of around $1,400 from Hunter to Joe, repaying supposedly a Ford truck. We all know what that stands for. That maybe people might roll their eyes at the idea that Biden.
Well, I think what they should do is they should say, we're going to charge Joe Biden with the crime of selling himself short. Because he was a turncoat to this country for China.
Yeah.
For $4,200 that was his in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But he just went through some shenanigans to get somebody to repay him back. He was out $4,200. And he's like, well, I know how to get that money back. I will sell out the country to China via my son, so he gets the $4,200 and puts that back in my pocket. Bingo,
yeah.
bango.
Yeah. I mean, and like, this is just why the Republicans pull better on the economy and being better for business. It's because, Biden sells out the country to China for like, I don't know, less than $5,000.
Less than rent in most urban areas.
Yeah, and someone like Jared Kushner does it, and he gets like over $1 billion deal from Saudi Arabia
he did peace in the Middle
exchange.
East, Emma.
Yeah, so I mean, but like that's the point, though. It's just Republicans know how to do business better.
Here is Lindsey Graham. The real question is, you got Republican senators distancing themselves right now. The real question is, will a Lindsey Graham vote for impeachment in the Senate, or will he not when he's faced with doing it? Right now, he's going to maintain this position because he realizes the House looks like they're backcrap crazy, and he's certainly not going to take it seriously until more information came out. I didn't realize it was $4,200. Whoa, that changes everything. But here he is now attempting to seem reasonable.
The other big story on Capitol Hill, the impeachment, of course, of impeachment inquiry into President Biden. Your colleague, Republican Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa, said that he does not see any evidence, quote, that the president is guilty of anything. Do you agree with him? Is there any evidence?
I just want to remind you, Chuck Grassley was one of the people who was pushing the idea of a 402 form, a form that they found that the FBI had taken a complaint from someone, and the FBI had investigated the complaint and found it completely unsubstantiated. But this was the thing that Grassley was like, they must release the form. And when they started to press him, it was the form 1023. And when they ultimately said, okay, well, here it is, he's like, well, I've seen the form. And they need to release the form. Now, the form doesn't necessarily say anything, but it should be released. Like, they've gone through this. And I think Grassley realized, like, boy, we don't have anything to even pretend that we don't have any. I mean, it is so bad. But here's Graham. Continue.
Grassley of Iowa said that he does not see any evidence, quote, that the president is guilty of anything. Do you agree with him? Is there any evidence so far?
I haven't really been paying that much attention to it. They have to prove that President Biden somehow financially benefited
What's he been
from
doing?
business.
Yeah.
What's he been doing? I haven't been paying attention. You haven't been paying attention to your party impeaching the president? Like, what have you been passing something?
Now, maybe he's just a little distracted by the genocidal crimes in Gaza like the rest of us, except he's just more looking at it with, drooling every time he sees a Palestinian
But honestly,
death.
what is he? Yeah, my thumbs are hard because I've just been doing this so much. But what have they been doing? What have they been doing? Nothing. They haven't passed a single piece of legislation. They had 23 pieces of legislation they passed in the House all year.
He's got to go Christmas shopping for the family he doesn't have.
Go ahead.
Enterprises of Hunter Biden, we'll see.
Have they done it yet, in your mind?
If there were a smoking gun, I think we'd be talking about it. But, the narrative that Hunter Biden presented is falling apart. The idea that Joe Biden knew nothing about the business dealing is falling apart. I'm not worried about impeaching the president right now. You know what I'm worried about? Helping the president bring the Mideast to a better spot, trying to convince the Arabs and the Israelis to not let Iran get you off track, give Israel the space to destroy Hamas. I'm trying to find a way forward to secure a broken border before we're attacked. That's what I'm more worried about than anything. I've never been.
Israel doesn't have the space to destroy Hamas. Any more space? They've taken basically all of Gaza.
You got to clear space, meaning clear out the people from Gaza.
This is Lindsey Graham trying to seem reasonable, and we'll see. We'll see what he does when it's time to actually vote in the Senate. If he is willing not to vote for Joe Biden's impeachment, I find it hard to believe, but we'll see. We don't have too much more time because we've got to do this.
Support our friends at the Prospect.
This I thought was pretty funny. Ron DeSantis, he's up in New Hampshire.
Why?
What's that?
Why? Why is he doing that?
Well, I'll tell you why he's up in New Hampshire. I'll tell you why he's in New Hampshire. Let's look at what happened in Iowa, and then we will go to Ron DeSantis in New Hampshire. Ron DeSantis, this poor guy, he has tried to run in so many, I have never seen so many different versions of a candidate come out. And each version of his candidacy does worse and worse.
Mm-hmm. It's like a carbon copy. It's a carbon copy of a carbon copy of a carbon copy. And then it's completely like a blob.
Someone told him, like, you want to grow over the course of your campaign. And he just took that literally and put stuff in his boots. But here he is in Iowa. And if you want to know why he's in New Hampshire, here he is in Iowa.
We beat Fauci on COVID. We beat
a sex offender going to school.
Stop it, excuse me. No, you know what happened? What happened is we're the #1 rated state for education in the country. That's what happened. We are #1 ranked in the country. Excuse me, I'm not finished. I'm doing my thing. No, stop it.
Doing my thing.
Stop it.
His name is Alan Covey.
We beat Fauci on COVID when they were trying to shut down and keep kids out of school. We stopped it. We beat the Democratic Party on election security. We made sure that they had universal voter ID. No ballot harvesting has been banned. Zuckerbucks have been banned. We made sure to beat George Soros when it came to criminal justice issues.
He's doing his thing.
He's doing his thing. He really
Stop it. I'm doing my thing.
Stop it. I'm in my flow. I'm in my bag right now, lady.
Honestly, like the idea, like this guy can't handle anything. You know, they had that I think like during the Clinton Obama thing, it was like, what happens at 3 a.m. when they get a call? I don't know. What happens in the middle of the afternoon when somebody interrupts Ron DeSantis? He falls apart.
That reminded me of like when I'm 13 or 14 trying to like position myself as an authority figure when I'm babysitting and just like, hey, you stop it right now. You stop it. Like desperately trying to have some gravitas, but he's got nothing there.
I would have loved the heckler to go like, oh, I'm sorry. You're doing your thing. Oh, forgive me. You go.
The opening, I just want to cut to this. The still of the next video we're going to play is just.
Oh, this is him doing his.
Well, to be fair,
his thing sucks ass.
No,
by the way.
No, put this picture back up because we asked the question, why is he in New Hampshire? It was because that was the treatment he was getting in Iowa, and then now just to be fair, there's two questions he was asked. The second question was, is Trump going to accept losing in New Hampshire if you win? And the first question was, before you answer that, can you do that scene from Zoolander where you do the blue steel look? And so this is where he's coming.
Governor, do you expect the former president to accept the results, say, in Iowa or New Hampshire, given the unfounded claims about fraud in 2020?
If Trump loses, he will say it's stolen no matter what. Absolutely. He will try to delegitimize the results. He did that against Ted Cruz in 2016.
Did that in 2016?
He will do that. I mean, even when The Apprentice didn't get an Emmy, he said. So I don't think there's been a single time he's ever been in competition for something where he didn't get it, where he's accepted. I don't think he will do that. So
I feel like there was a big time, like a big example where I'm pretty sure Ron DeSantis was like, there was definitely problems with that, but we should move on. If I'm not mistaken, but why doesn't he bring that up?
It's so weird. What is he talking about Ted Cruz too? He beat Ted Cruz in 2016
in Iowa.
Well, Cruz won in Iowa.
Talking about Iowa.
And Trump did say something about that, and the thing about the Emmy for The Apprentice is also true. I just feel like there was a much bigger example.
More recent to the Apprentice thing.
But maybe that was the outlier. Broken Clock. Yeah, right. Broken Clock was right there about the rigging.
This is like also when DeSantis is going to be, when he's at his peak excitement, because he's surrounded by people with signs, and as opposed to all the other people who really don't like him.
God, even a woman's beating him. A woman.
Nikki Haley seems to be opening up a little bit of distance, particularly in New Hampshire.
How's that feel, Ron?
One poll had it 44-29 so far with Trump and Haley in New Hampshire, which is like easily the most interesting result we've seen. I feel
So
like
far.
in 6 months.
Yep.
But there's Ron DeSantis. Last opportunity for Ron DeSantis. I don't know. What else should we do here?
Let me check.
Read a couple IMs. You can
Sounds
pick
good.
one more.
Great.
Kowalski. Oh, I want to say, oh gosh, I can't remember. We got a gift. Well, first off, Kowalski sent something. It wasn't
Is
to
this
me. I think it was to
ESPN
you
related?
guys.
All right, we'll talk about this on ESPN today. Thank you. Kowalski.
But also, listener Chris sent us a couple of packs, 6 packs of beer. Some interesting beer over there that we will save for
See
the
a pepper
next.
on one of them, Emma.
Yeah,
By the way.
for the next
more
for the next debate.
more spicy beer. Oh my God.
Kowalski. Sam is sounding like he's been partaking in some holiday beverages with these slurry of words. Israel's treatment of civilians is very similar to the U.S. cavalry treatment of Indians out on the Great Plains. I recall Custer and his men once fired upon women and children and elderly under a white flag of truce and an American flag at the designated spot where they were told to be at to show that they were not being hostile, and they were all massacred anyways. These are also the same tactics used by the Germans in Poland and Ukraine. It's almost like violent colonial projects all rhyme.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Scalia's ghost. That's the wrong pope to have on the show. We need the Pope of the Jews. Jingle Smells production assistant. Hey, this is actually Pope Francis calling from a +379 country code. Although I was hoping to discuss the 2016 primary, I think Jimmy Dore was right about some things. Are the lines open? God bless you all. They are not. We've got to wrap things up a little bit on the early side today. Texas leftist Reagan left the Christian Church, Disciples of Christ, that he was raised in, which is funny because the DOC are now one of the most progressive denominations in the nation. Interesting. Joe Snuffy. Hypothetical question for a friend. What is the right thing to do for folks who work for a government program that is genuinely doing a lot of good if they find out that politicians who are instrumental in the program's continued existence are potentially running a kickback scheme for campaign donations in how the program awards contracts? Is shutting up so the program continues to exist the correct call? Oy. I mean, would it? Well, I mean, you would have your friend would have a better sense of whether it would put the program in jeopardy. But is the program running well if there's if it's requiring kickbacks? I mean, I understand your dilemma. I don't know. I don't know. You need to make an assessment. Obviously, the corruption is horrible, but you need to make an assessment as to if you think that this program is would shut down and is doing something very important. That's a very hard question. Schmaz Pro, love the show. Thank you. Ramona. Here in New Hampshire, I've seen literally 2 DeSantis signs. It's only one more than I've seen for Asa Hutchinson. Make of that what you will. Is there a clip that we should do?
There's Stephen Miller 113, or we could touch on the Pope's comments.
Oh yeah, we
came
should do
up.
this with the
Yeah,
Pope.
yeah,
This is an
yeah.
important story. And you know, I don't want to oversell it, but this is an important step, I think. I don't know how this works enough to know that whether this can be walked back by the next Pope. But Pope Francis today, 10 a.m., said that Catholics has allowed, I guess he presents an edict, sort of like when Ben Shapiro does about who constitutes a good Jew. Allowing Catholic priests, to bless couples in same-sex relationships. This is not marrying them.
It's a slippery slope.
It's a slippery slope. The Vatican had long said it could not bless same-sex couples because it would undermine church doctrine that marriage is only between a man and a woman. So I guess presumably the priest comes up and says, bless you, in the same way
Right.
that he would for a male and female marriage. The new rule, according to the Times, was issued in a declaration by the Church's Office on Doctrine and introduced by its prefect, Cardinal Victor Manuel Fernandez, who said that the declaration did not amend the traditional doctrine of the Church about marriage because it allowed no liturgical rite that could be confused with the sacrament of marriage. He said it's
Seems kind of obvious. Like the people that were objecting to it were maybe being a little bit too cautious. Like, it's not marriage.
It's not marriage, but it is a recognition of the relationship between these two people. That one can understand the possibility of blessing couples in irregular situations and same-sex couples without officially validating their status or changing in any way the Church's perennial teaching on marriage. It doesn't officially validate their status, but it sort of unofficially validates their status.
Which is very much in keeping with what this Pope Francis has been kind of doing, right? Gesturing towards more acceptance of gay people, gesturing towards more acceptance of trans people. And then there was this, speaking out here, like against what happened in Gaza on Saturday, where reportedly an Israeli military sniper shot and killed 2 women inside of the Holy Family Parish in Gaza. There was a Christian minority in the Palestinian territories. And so I think Pope Francis felt compelled to speak about it. He's been trying to call for and use his platform to call for a ceasefire for a while now, but now, it's directly a Christians who have been killed.
Continuo a ricevere da casa.
Continue 1 second from Gaza. What?
Go ahead, Bradley. Just play it. I'll move it.
Notizie molto gravi e dolorose. Civili inermi.
Unarmed civilians are the target of bombings. Go ahead.
Sono oggetto di bombardamenti e spari.
And gunfire.
E questo è avvenuto
This has even happened
all'interno
within the
del
compound of the Holy Family
parrocchiale
Parish,
della Santa Famiglia, dove non
where
ci
there are
sono
no terrorists.
ma famiglie,
Only families,
bambini,
children,
persone
people who are
malate
sick and have
con
disabilities,
disabilità, suori.
and nuns.
Una mamma e
A mother and her
figlia,
daughter,
la signora
Miss Nahida Khalil Anton,
e la figlia
and her daughter Samara Kamal Anton
sono state
killed.
uccise e altre persone
And others were injured by
ferite
snipers
dai tiratori scelti mentre
as
andavano
they
in
walked
bagno.
to the bathroom.
È stata danneggiata
The house of
la
the Sisters
casa
Mother
delle sorelle
Teresa
di
was
Madre
damaged,
Teresa, colpito
and their generator
il loro
was hit.
generatore. Qualcuno dice
Some say this is terrorism, this is war.
è la guerra. Sì, è la guerra.
Yes, it's war,
è il
it's terrorism.
Per questo
That is why
la
Scripture
scrittura
affirms that
afferma
God
che
stops
Dio
wars,
fa cessare le guerre, rompe gli
breaks the
archi
bow,
e spezza le
splinters the
lance.
spear.
Preghiamo il
Let us
Signore
pray to the Lord
la
for
pace.
peace.
So that is him calling the IDF's actions there terrorism. The actions of snipers killing women. And snipers have scopes. Snipers can see. It's like they are, I mean, we can start with the premise of like, they are targeting their sniper fire at a church, okay? Then the added layer of the snipers can see who they're targeting. The added layer that these are women and children.
Yeah, just horrible.
It's just horrible. But daily occurrence in Gaza right now.
Nice to have the State Department spokespeople say that Israel takes care to not do bad things more than any other military.
Couple IMs and then we're out of here. Germinal Laerty. The Pope's edict is entirely symbolic and means nothing. A Catholic version of milquetoast liberalism. Yeah, I mean, I imagine, although, again, slippery slope.
It's something to mention if you are, say, talking to your Catholic family about this. Although I will say that some people do have Catholic family who consider Pope Francis to be the Antichrist. So,
well, I mean, that sounded pretty woke there. So.
And yeah, that probably didn't help for those people.
Okay, 5 more IMs. Moody Monkey. You know, Biden is so old, you may think soda still costs a nickel. Therefore, $4,200 is a fortune at 1940s prices. Dave the Red. San, if only someone owed Rudy for legal fees, possibly a former president. I can't imagine he owes them that much. Graham Page. The real high crimes and misdemeanors were the friends made along the way. And the final IM of the day. Please wink during the 235 thing so chat knows you need us to donate at that moment so you get credit from my $100. Left is best.
Okay.
I will do that. Tune in just about 10 minutes and we will be on the American Prospect Marathon. Emma may come later. We'll see. I will announce that when we get on. All right, folks, see you tomorrow. Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job today.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I get somewhere the choice was made, for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes you? Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. The months drifted into years while I shifted in and out